Hey guys, welcome. I'm gonna talk low so I don't make any loud noises to disturb any sleeping guests. I notice also it's Fibonacci Day, so that's cool. 11/23. Cool. Okay. So, I've been talking about Hawaii. I just felt like I should maybe record some things. So I was mentioning, I've been talking about this concept that Hawaii perhaps was a sphere, and in so being, it had currents flowing from both eastward and westward propagating currents that collided at a focused point of Hawaii, basically. But not just the big island of Hawaii, all of Hawaii, which was a single part basically by currents colliding, but then forming a vortex to then form a physical particle that was so massive that it was all of the islands of Hawaii as its surface area. And more I've realized. Like, so one thing I'll point out is this, like, there's a chunk of this missing of Malachi that's apparently slid into the ocean here. So all this has been like remapped. Like each chunk has been sort of like replaced over here. Interestingly, in a similar way to what I'm attempting to do, it was done here. But I was trying to find the picture. It was in a YouTube video I was watching earlier. I'm not completely sure if I could find it again. I'm not running into that issue, but essentially it was generally just elongated a bit, a little wider, maybe not the same angle exactly. But so I had this thought, well, this is nice, like we can see surface currents pretty well, and it kind of looks generally like it generally fits, generally. But wouldn't it be beneficial to do the same with geological structures? And I did it with these, and I was like, it doesn't really make sense there, but like in the meantime, I realized this chunk especially makes sense. Let me zoom in. Here, right here, like in this general region, I might have it a little off slope, so like minus, I think, I've done that so many times. -5, I think. There we go. A little more like sloped into it. But even like if it's not quite the same over here, it's also like there's a current that's going between here that then perhaps widens as it causes this like sphere. So initially they're adjacent, but then it physically widens the gap between them so that they even show it in the structuring. Like we're seeing like results of the process, especially in the shapes. So this is something that I really thought of interest. Let's maybe zoom out real quick. This one doesn't show it quite as well. This here, I was like, what does this look like? It looks like something. I kept thinking about it. It's like, I think it looks like, of all the things, kind of like California, but really more so like here. Like right here. It looks like this segment. And it occurred to me, this segment is sending a current this way, but it also has a current going this way. And there's this concept of like a snake rattle tail thing that I've been running into. It's been a while since I came across it as something of. Let's pull up the best reference, which is Fiji, which fortunately we're pretty close to here. Here it is. Here's Fiji. And Fiji has these snake features where they're basically like positive, negative, yin yang heads of the snake that then like wrap around one another and form a structure down this way, a structure down this way, a structure down this way, and a fourth one down this way, maybe. And in essence, produce four like snake things that have a chain of volcanoes on one side and a chain which are pretty much eddies, and a chain of little like notches on the image that I've seen. I don't know if I can find it very quickly. I don't want to go searching for it if I can't just find it. But take note of this structure where there's this particle. So this is what I'm essentially getting at, is that this here kind of was like the particles like effects on the ocean floor, as well as its magnetic field of currents that were flowing. So this really shows, by the way, that magnetic fields are currents. And so my thought is perhaps we can see features like this. So especially note this here. Okay. So generally though, like the particle was forming here, which was actually generally related to Australia. Like it started here, and then the ammonite structure started to occur, and in so doing, it left behind this particle that then broke into pieces when it was actually over here, broke into pieces, and did so by like chunk after chunk, just like by the currents, just pushing it off. And then it enters into the current of the ocean as like another island, which at times turns. So it's not just like directly in the. So I had to like rotate these to even possibly have them relate to one another. But there's a lot of interesting things. So let's maybe just go over here. So we've kind of talked about in the last couple videos cottonmouth. How there's two currents colliding, it seems. That's initially I was thinking it was three, but now I've kind of come to the conclusion I think it's just two, and they're generally this way. In terms of like a focus, it's not really on these bodies, it's on this body, where like the currents especially focus. These were more like extended portions of the body, but the current was flowing here especially focused, and produced a boundary where then Mauna Kea, I don't even know how to say it. Let's just look it up real quick.
Mauna Kea.
Mauna. Vortex.
Mauna Kea.
I've never seen a vortex on one of these, but it was on that one. Crazy. Cool. So there's a current this way colliding with a current this way. This current appears to generally like be able to like push the boundary towards this other current, but this current like squeezes a current through and produces a current through this way, like here and here, I guess, generally, but like through the all of it, like a triangle region. And then it focusedly goes this way, and then it curiously bends over here when like it's a focus beam that's going into a opposing current. So like if it's making it through it, it's because it's going straight. So it curiously bends, by the way. And then we found ammonite features here. Ammonite features. Here we can see one here, we can see one here. I hadn't noticed that one, now I see that one. But that one going backwards that way is also the center of one going the other way over here. And also it even extends out to here. And there's probably like maybe even like all of this is an ammonite at least broke. I was like, is this an ammonite? Maybe if I put the islands adjacent, I can see more like complete ammonite features of this object, not realizing that I'd be like, if this wrapped around, it would make a lot of sense in terms of like where this goes and then that goes over here. Like over here, it would make a lot of sense. And if that's the case, so anyway, so there's those ammonites. There's a shallogram here. I don't want to get too caught up on things I've already talked about because I really want to just quickly record this. So, in essence, the currents are coming in opposing one another, but then they like go up, but then they like can't go up any further, so they come back down and begin to create like a spiral at that focal point that then forms more and more of a sphere, and it just like coats layer after layer to the sphere and like brings a current within it to reshape it and bubble it out, and like viscous material that or I just realized that viscosity is conveniently described as resistance to flow. That way I can like be like, okay, it's that way. Because I always get it backwards. I just know the concept, but like whether it's this way or that way in terms of high and low, it just kind of isn't as clear as like temperature in my mind. Anyway, so essentially it like bubbles up and creates a shell that's like cooler than the inner current's heat that's bubbling it up and creating this like particle is my thought. So I've been kind of investigating it, and we can see on the surface this boundary forms, which I figure what happens is essentially it goes this way. Although this is interestingly going like here. It would be interesting if this goes off this way. And then there's a counter current that comes in here. But which direction these currents go is kind of hard to tell, because I'm like, it's hard to tell. First of all, is this even like? First of all, if in order for any of this to work, it has to actually be the case that Hawaii was a sphere. So there's that. And like, so I started to just put them together randomly, and I will say, like, I'll be the first to say this is not like set in stone in terms of the arrangement, but like it does, on the plus side, it does have a lot of like interesting things that I wanted to get into. So like, my thought is, here is a location where there's a current going this way. Oh my God, that explains so much. Imagine, here's the mantle puncture hole by Dwarka, and the one current goes westward. And however exactly it goes westward out of Dwarka. So like here's the mantle puncture hole. It's going westward through like the like northern Africa, and then reaches the Mediterranean, and it splits, and then it goes through North America and Central America, through it, collides with Australia, where then the current largely starts to like branch outward and bubble. Perhaps branching this way though, like maybe that's why Molokai has all these like this seamount, although the seamount probably formed after it moved into position because it just kind of slid away. Like if it had happened while it was still a sphere, it would probably just be like back here as part one of the like left behind chunks of the sphere as it like broke apart, if this is what happened. Wherever exactly the sphere would be, maybe some of this is not part of it, but maybe the more particulate components of this stretch are. Maybe we even see an Einstein cross. I don't know if that's important, relevant, or like it's part of me for just seeing an Einstein cross and acting like it's real and relevant. We'll move on. So just generally leaving particles behind, maybe to a point where it just kind of creates like something, but then down here, like it still has a bit here, and then it just slides in here, so that makes this distinguishably different from like this stuff back here, which is maybe like before something pops, like it starts like some flake on the edge of it like flicks off, and some other flake like it flicks off some component of it, like breccia lava, maybe. I'm not sure if I'm which one. The AA one. Yeah, like that. How it's just like crumbling. So like Hawaii, let's just say it's a ball, and then like it's sitting there in a current that is, maybe it's sitting there. Maybe it's sitting there. Let's say it's sitting there, or else it's moving. It doesn't. It's got to be sitting there. It's sitting there in the current. That's what they do. They're masses. Which, if we watch lava flows are so informative to this, because they'll just have like chunks build up in the current that just have layers that just, as the chunk gets bigger, the current of lava just puts layer after layer on top of it, which then make it a mass. This also, I'm noticing, looks like an ammonite. I don't want to just see ammonites everywhere, but it really does, because they really are everywhere. So back to what I was saying. I was thinking this is like South America here, right this side. Where did I say Africa? Coming across here, so Africa would be here. Maybe like, if this is South America, it maybe even is only like here, and then Africa would be like this stretch. Generally speaking, like it literally would be fracturing the same way, probably because it's a particle that was in resonance with the earth, so that it was the earth resonantly. In resonance, it was like the earth is, in a way where it's like visible, perhaps. And then if that's the case, then where did I say Australia? Australia. So maybe it's not exactly. Also here, like if this is Europe, this is like the most extinct the oldest and the oldest volcano, and is extinct on at least this island. I really have not been able to research this extensively, just kind of think about it and in passing. Pardon me for even doing that. I really probably shouldn't be. It's rude. But but generally though, I'm like, that's oddly at a very similar position to the Siberian traps, which got me kind of thinking about that. If this is then maybe over here would be like China, I guess, or like sorry, every other country, Eastern Asia, maybe here, where like, oh my god. So like this is like Eastern Asia-ish, which maybe India is like this region, like here, under the like where the currents were going all over the place. Maybe, although I'm not sure what that would be. That maybe that would be like the tip of India, where there's a that would make sense for that gravitational anomaly. This. Maybe that's what that was just like a bubble. One of these. One of these, I guess a good representation of it is here, where there's just a negative, positive, middle. Maybe, whereas Sri Lanka would be the middle then, in that case. Middle. Freaking huge, like, bloop bubble that just kind of, maybe that participated in the expansion too. I'm not sure what the boundaries are. I'm just mousing over generally, pardon me. I do see a kind of like plausible boundary here. After that, I'm just kind of mousing over. Maybe this just in the blue. I don't know if that would be it. It's plausibly real, but also there's this, maybe like a larger version of it, like cutting across here, right to there even. Like there's that current, or part of it. Because I was thinking here, although maybe the current went through here and kind of pushed a mound, so this is more like a negative positive, while the current went fully through. But if that's the case, then like all these islands, and just the islands throughout the Pacific, would basically be representative of like these. At some point they would become like no longer continents, no longer representing continents, and instead representing these. Interestingly, that thought occurs to me, like I mentioned, this looks a lot like over here, but this is still part of North America, so it's not like a separate chunk. So it's like, well, maybe sometimes like the chunk breaks away, so maybe even that's what could have been like going on here, but it like did it before, and so this time it didn't do it again. It only did it the one time, and the first time it did it here. So maybe this chunk here, and maybe this, The first one being here, the second one being maybe one of the others. I don't know which one. Like even one of that, or that's probably Central America. Like literally representative of. I wonder if it has like nuances in the terrain that look more like Mexico and like well, if the Gulf was actually if the water was up here, then it would actually be here as the boundary kind of thing, and over here would be more like something to make it just that much more identicalness. I can dream. I can dream if I want to. Okay, let's keep looking. Which I just had this thought occur to me. If this is the case, then we could also like use the Hawaiian eruptions as like a microcosm of the macrocosm of Earth to get like an idea. Interestingly, there's really currents, like really currents, not just like lines, but like figure 8 currents, like in and out. Whoa. I haven't really looked around this at the. Okay, let's not get caught on that. That kind of looks shallogrammy. So let's go here. Remember when I said to keep in mind that particle with the flow field out of it, especially with that bar across? Flow field out of it. This one having like a lobe type thing. Oops. So like that kind of is suggestive that this portion is perhaps not accurate. That's the thing. I was trying to find like where's the like by using this map I could feasibly be like okay, kind of like over here where it looks like this looks correct in terms of just like well, I mean I am kind of honestly, it's all these maps are all made by the same people. I literally have not even bothered to check if their color scheme is kind of at least somewhat uniform across it enough that like because I think they're using them to label like certain events and things like structures with certain names that aren't necessarily like it could be the same material here, but it's unfortunately like it's a different map that has a different labeling structure. So like there is that. So let's look at this though. What's interesting about this and maybe revealing even is that I just had a thought. Nice, nice. Glad to have that. Glad to have had that thought too. Because essentially the if we go to this one, a current is almost guaranteed going right here. Let's look at the maps so we can look closer without it being such a pain to scroll in. Like there's a current that went through here one way or the other, this way or this way. Based on this, maybe this way. So this way. So let's look at the map and just so like that kind of thing. Like based on the currents, it kind of looks like it's more likely that it went this way. In fact, even now that I look at it more, based on this current, it looks like it flowed into this and fed this region like the cursed magnetic anomaly or the eastern South Asia over here, especially like this, just kind of flowed in, filled the region, produced like a density to it, a mass, flowed in. I know it's backwards to how we interpret things, but this is how things formed, is backwards, and then the energy, like it spontaneously forms backwards, and then the energy slowly retreats back to the way that it formed from, and then at some point some type of change occurs where it like spontaneously, relatively speaking, changes to some new state. So there's a essentially like this block has a current feeding into its boundaries that were cooling, but the current kept this region hot enough to allow the current to keep flowing through it. So it just went through here, but then it got trapped in the polygon, and then it just kind of circled in it and massed, like especially at a nucleus kind of thing. But then the current definitely went this way. So we can almost say with certainty the current went this way, which is good because over here the current would have gone this way and then separated. Like it doesn't really make sense for many like individual currents to just come in and merge here. It makes more sense for them one current to just meet resistance, which seems to be like a mass that built up here, I guess. Some reason, maybe because like this current initially fed in over here and just built a mass over here. That seems plausible. Also, it looks like there might have been a current coming in this way, so that's good to notice. So, like, there's also more, just like on Earth, like currents crossing, like, not just this way. Like, just because there's one going this way doesn't mean there's none going this way. Like, it looks like there's a current that fed into this, coupled with this current also that kind of amassed over here, and then this current that came in this way, which we'll get into where it came from, not from here, came across and then just hit this mass and split through it, I guess, and in so doing just like took the mass and redistributed it through this region, especially while producing like a indication of the flow path. And then just like as the flow made its way through in a like probably turbulent, spirally, like, but it made it through here, generally speaking, maybe mostly this way. Looks like, even with like branches off that maybe just don't really continue or like remerge into the same general stream, and then just through the smiley face and out here. So that's the general thought for this island. So that does here strongly suggest that when I redrew this current going this way, or going this way, it strongly suggests, I might even be the last thing I did practically. I don't know what I'm undoing. Undo. Redo. Redo. Fine. But this is probably going this way. And then it looks like also this I drew the wrong way. It's actually coming in this way. Now, so this is going out this way. This is going in this way. That's where I kind of look like this current maybe goes up in here, but also branches over and comes in here. It might be, I don't want to get too stuck on the currents because it's not as important as the overall picture of that this is probably happening, and here's some cool things about it. And so like, I was initially thinking the ammonite formed where like Australia would have been, but this kind of looks like it would have been Australia, although maybe it's the Himalayas. Like literally in a different plane where they're like on their side practically. Where like I, it would be so cool if that was the case. So pardon me for just even suggesting it, because that would be so cool if like the region of Earth that this represented was just the Himalayas. I'm just thinking like this being like a mirror of like this region here of like the Himalayas, and then this region, and then like generally over here. Like, it would be so cool if I could find Hawaii and then explain if like this region was like the Himalayas, and then this region was where that like drainage occurred, and then over here is like that, or even here kind of is like that, essentially here but with these roots, like here but with these roots as like the Himalayas, something like that. That would be so cool. Oh my god, that would be so cool. I'm trying to think if I forgot anything, like especially that I'd like to talk about before I stop recording. Um, so if this is like the Siberian traps, this is kind of like Europe and over here. This is like North America, or maybe Europe would be up here then. Like I got kind of bending up this way. Like if this is the Himalayas, I don't think that's where the currents flowed. Like it would have to have been like this basically. If I could reposition this, let's see. Essentially, instead of what I did here. So there's also this. Back to that seamount thing. Like there's probably a gap here. I kind of figured like this. And then that seamount thing. But then, like maybe it was shooting a beam through here that was generally breaking, like swirling here and bringing like pieces of the swirl here like a laser through this region, which was just kind of not not necessarily on top of the surface so as to like cause the seamount to be disrupted, but underneath it so as to like cause it to be unstable. Maybe that makes sense. So maybe like it's shooting like lower elevation, like by propagating out these like seamount islands back here, and maybe even these like it's physically causing like a bubble underneath wherever I was looking. Or yeah, here, like underneath the seamount section here. So that these two segments kind of like are more appropriate. Like this maybe could be argued to make sense here, just kind of like that. Just like that. And so like the degree of widening is unclear. But if they're adjacent, pretty much adjacent, it's hard to make them like fit. Is that what that one is? Which one? That one above that one. If we just kind of ignore this segment and just, I'd like to just visually see it still, but Okay, so let me go to my clips.
On faster-moving Pohoioi flows, the crust may become detached and get completely spun around on the surface of...
Sorry, I don't want to get my video blocked. Okay, we're just gonna keep playing this. Current coming in this way, and it essentially it runs into like a uphill over here that then causes it to bend around the corner. And when it goes around the corner, okay, that's probably what I gotta name this. Although that's not nearly Hawaii enough. Also notice this looks like a trilobite. It just looks like a trilobite. Even now, but it also looks like an ammonite. So that's what I'm getting at. So it's an ammonite, more so than a trilobite, but it looks like a trilobite in other ways. So it's kind of like not like as a totality, but in just like the general darkness of it, maybe, and like the spine to it that's and the rolling up of it. Like, okay, so essentially, it comes around this corner and wraps around, and in so doing, the current runs into it and starts to rotate. Like the portion that runs up the furthest gets kind of trapped there and loses momentum, while the rest of it like learns and like starts to turn in front of it, so that like basically it begins to create this rotation of this surface material that has, notice down here, it forms a ammonite lobe at the front, or whatever the term is, like the ammonite structure that is like the way it breathes, and it's almost like it breathes, it heats, is what it's doing. Like the heat is trapped in this rock and it's breathing through ventilation that it forms naturally in the structure of an ammonite to make an ammonite have more like porosity than generally rocks do, more structure than rocks generally do, more differentiation than rocks generally do, as well as shallograms to have the features they have when in their own ways. But so this current comes down here, wraps around, starts to roll around, and just notice this current starts to feed in this way. And so it produces a boundary here that then like shapes the totality of it, and it just keeps rotating. And then over here, just like a ammonite, like here's the head section, and then along the back is this like dendritic feature opening up where it's just not as like formed. It's got more noticeably, it's opening from like a single block that came out of the structure. Out of this ammonite structure came this block, which then widened this segment to elongate. So it was like a single node within, but then it elongates here, forming just like ventilation for the heat to vent out of just the structure being formed. And then as this occurs, the counterclockwise rotating ammonite in this current, as it runs into resistance on the other side, then begins to produce a clockwise rotating like offspring ammonite over here, which then begins to physically like block the back portion of this ammonite structure and just strip material from it and really begin to make it like dendritic. Like over here, it's not quite as dendritic as it is over here in this segment. 100% this is, as I put it, an ammonite being formed. And I'm sure I missed a lot of details that people who see this will be like, oh, like there is a current that's coming this way around this nucleus that's forming. Essentially, it goes this way, but then it begins to form a nucleus along the wall, and that causes like the main current to go around it, so that the current generally goes along the back of the ammonite, which then leads to the like dendritic features. So that's just, pardon me, dendrite. Let's look at some dendrites. Like this kind of feature, but especially like tend to be across like the back of it, if I can find a good one. I mean, these are doing it a lot. I mean, certainly they do it the whole time. Just the degrees. I was expecting. I'm not like. It's more like I was expecting to find a good example. And I'm like, where's a good example? Maybe just the dark and like this crack here across here. It's not as dark over here. It's almost like this is scorched or something. I'm just spitballing there. I swear I've seen ones that are like distinctly like along this far side. They're just like so dendritic that they're just like open. They begin to physically have gaps, where over here it doesn't. Maybe because I didn't put a space. Let's see if we can find a good example of one with large gaps. This is interesting. See, that's even more trilobite-like. It starts to have other trilobite features, and yet being like basically the same thing as this. It's just like whatever's occurring. This lava here is like Pehoho. I don't know if I say that.
Pahoehoe.
Pahoehoe. Pahoehoe. Pahoehoe. It's like Pahoehoe, where it's got a smooth, low viscosity where it doesn't resist flow. But like it can have a higher viscosity, and that will generally cause like these features more, but on a smaller scale initially, where it like essentially produces a not Pehoehoe, but an aho lava like this kind of lava, but still like structured in a like low viscosity fluid lava, but just more towards that end of the spectrum. Okay, probably there's a like that kind of thing going on with like this kind of thing. That's what I'm getting at. That's all. Maybe this one shows it well. Like the way this is more white and this is more like green. It's got color to it. This is probably just like straight one material. This has total differentiation going on. There's no way these are fossils. It didn't just happen to crystallize like this way. It's like that's how currents flow through, like this, by this current flowing here, which then had a leading edge here at the, like, at this point. But then, like, if it goes over here, maybe it like gets stuck and starts to become like, because essentially this is kind of at the wrong position. I believe it should be more it should be here. It should be here. So that means, like, if it was there, it should basically be all of these all the way around to basically the beginning of it. So at some point, like, this leading segment just like became the nucleus of one, and then it became this one specifically. This leading segment was actually here. This was the leading segment, but it basically hit the wall and got trapped here and started to spiral. And then this one started to emerge from the heat within the overall current, which then led to a chain reaction of ammonite, just like here, where we see ammonite. This one's, I saw this one backwards, right? Like here. And then also here. So like there's little vortexes. This even has like a yin yang to it right there. This has a yin yang, like straight up, dude. In a hexagon. Mount Grenard, is that you? I don't know, this might be Mount Grenard, honestly. Like on the mini Earth, the microcosm equivalent of Mauna Kea, perhaps is the mantle puncture hole and the mountain that emerges from it at Mount Grenard. Maybe. Okay, were there any other continents that I felt pointedly made sense? This also, I don't know of anywhere that on Earth that might be, unless it is the East African Rift. Does that make sense where I was saying it earlier? I was suggesting that this was South America. This was Africa. So it basically would have, it has an African rift. Maybe it's not quite at the angle that I would anticipate it. Like the angle I would anticipate it is over here. But interestingly, maybe that's like, maybe it went the other way. Like this current is actually wrong. It went this way, maybe. Although that, it really seems like it went this way based on the shape, so nix that. But this current goes in here, but it could have gone this way, but it went this way, so it almost is like at the very tail end. It basically, by being the negative to the positive Earth had the end go this way, whereas Hawaii had the end go this way, of the causing like an East African rift equivalent, maybe. Let's look at the East African rift after checking this out real quick. So it comes in straight. Although maybe that's where is that coming from? Yeah, that's coming from, according to this, if this is in some way generally valid, it's coming from the mantle puncture hole over here. Although maybe it comes up this way. It may actually go up this way and go in here, but at some point when it fractures instead, like this energy comes in that way. Initially it was feeding that way, but these two segments separate, but the current's still feeding in this way, which then feeds in here. that kind of makes sense to me, and that's kind of how was thinking the East African Rift was formed, was like post-expansion. Like it caused, initially the current was going back across between Africa and like India, basically. Africa, and Antarctica, and India. But then like it switched at some point when the Earth started to expand, so it essentially went this way into Africa. So maybe like only this is Africa and this is South America and this is Antarctica, North America, Central America, Himalayas. I'm saying it. um, Philippines. Is that what that is? I think it's the Philippines. Pardon me, guys. Pretty sure it's Philippines. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. The Philippines being like a many island place. What does that mean? What does Philippine mean? No, like, meaning. There's gotta be some meaning. I'm not gonna look for it. It's okay. It didn't immediately come up. I don't wanna get too distracted on that. But yeah, Philippines. I'm not sure what this would represent. Maybe, it's so big. Like, that's the thing. Like, this is the Himalayas and this is Africa. Also, maybe over here, which is maybe like the Arabian Peninsula. I almost said Saudi Arabia again. Antarctica. And then, like, I really feel like it's possible that because of what the Deccan Traps really is like, it really is represented by, like, this is India. And there's a current coming in. Wherever this current comes in is where the, this current coming down this way creates the Indonesian archipelago. Down through here, basically a current comes down this way, causing novas, separating this the whole way through here, like through, and then out through, I guess, here, like right through there generally, and then it like widens to the point where it creates like a whole wave, and maybe this here, I immediately see an ammonite. I'm like, if this here, then it would be representative of this. And then I was like, okay, so if this is India, are there any ammonites on the eastern side of India? Right here. Generally speaking, like ammonite, and also like this being the dendritic region where this cross current was occurring from the storm sending the current in 180 degrees pretty much. I did not. So I was thinking Australia because of this ammonite in Australia. Like, of course, this is representative of Australia on here. Like, of course it is. But actually, maybe not. Maybe it really is like some segment here, and then like I really want to say the Himalayas are the rest. Somehow, I just want to say it. Part of me. Although maybe, did I find an explanation for this one? I really need to get to bed soon. This is already an hour. Holy crap. This is huge. Like, if it wasn't so, how can I even do? Like, I want to be able to do this. Gosh, how cool is this? A mini Earth on Earth, dude. That's just laying there, hanging out in the sun on the beach, be in the beach, be in Hawaii. Oh my god, how fucking cool is that? Oh my god. I should label these like Philippines, Central America. I was thinking of doing that. Next map, doing that. Siberian traps. I'm definitely doing that. Don't doubt that. Don't you worry. I'll make a map just like this, but with those things, so everyone can like quickly reference that. And I mean, this really shows the Earth expanded. Also, by the way, like if this happen, if this is able to happen, where we can take the like a sphere and map the Earth on it. Like, sorry, that made no sense. Take a sphere and map Hawaii on it, and then overlay Hawaii with the currents of the Earth, and have that also make sense. And to a point where this like debris of the Hawaiian island sphere breaking into its smaller, more stable constituents in Earth's stable environment, it just so this is probably a pole. This is probably like the North Pole. I was thinking here is kind of representative of like here. I wonder if there's even like an X. Maybe there's an X, like a current this way and a current this way. It does now that I'm looking for it. Like I guess there could be X's. Maybe there are just cross currents too that are crossing this, making it have more of an X feature like this does. Because it's generally got like a node here, but like if we look here, like it's generally got like a node. But if we scroll out, it's got generally a node with like branching features. And this maybe is even like northern Canada, Hudson Bay. Is that fitting? Does that fit? Where did I say? Okay, this is North America. Yeah, I said this is North America, right? Okay, that gives us an idea, though, that there's got to be something missing in, like, the positioning of these. Like, what if I can repeatedly do this because it wrapped around itself, so that, like, because it's a sphere laid out in in these chunks, we can just like arrange them adjacent to one another, like over and over again, like in different ways that represent like that portion of the sphere more readily. Like I was thinking, like here, let's scroll in. It's hard for me to see. I'm sure it's hard for you to see. If it's hard for me to see, like who knows what you're watching on. I've watched this on my phone. I'm like, this is barely watchable without this underground science series is barely watchable without a computer monitor, pretty much, or TV. Like maybe but not unequivocally. But like interestingly, maybe also down here, like or something. Oh, wait, no, that can't be. That can't be. It can only attach like on each side. It can't just like continuously attach, obviously. Just in the way that I was doing it like this, where I had this and then I had it on the opposite side. Let's see. So now that I mention it, this might help us clear things up. Oh yeah, this is the Himalayas. Literally this entire island. Earth's equivalent. Which one is this? Oahu. Which one is this? Like to be legitimately discovering that this is representative. I'm almost like, I'm certain this represents the Himalayas. And probably sheds light on the nuances of like how the master distribution occurred in certain ways. That I'm just gonna go ahead and end this video here because yeah, it's just crazy though. That's what like this line of reasoning enables. Although who knows what else it enables. So and like enabling me, although that might be a moot point sooner or later. Who the fuck knows? Alright, see you guys later. Himalayas of Hawaii. That's what I'm gonna call it, something of that nature. The Himalayas of Hawaii. Let's make sure before I do that. The Himalayas of Hawaii. Hidden gems would be the most accurate way to describe some of the hole-in-the-wall eateries. Find the Himalayas in Hawaii. I wonder where this is. It's right at Mount Everest. I bet it is. Or maybe this is Mount Everest. I'm not sure. Like right at the peak there. I feel like it's more like where like the most mass across the distance is. Like here there's mass, so it kind of makes like this region across the most, kind of like a straight line across, and then just a pile of mass that's like this is the highest pile because this protrusion of this like thing here. Maybe something of that nature that just makes it so that that's Mount Everest, even on top of just being like like on the same island as the one that is the Himalayan equivalent. See you guys.